Now, welcome again, everybody, to Comics with Curmudgeons. This is episode 2. I finally decided to give this show a name. And considering I have Doc mostly on, the Curmudgeon is a appropriate moniker. I am joined today by just Pele, who some of you might be familiar with from the older days of Comics Aficionados.
Better days.
And Gevian Dargan. I hope I pronounced your last name right.
Yep, you got it perfect.
From Animated Concepts, also I found on Comics Aficionados as well. That got me through many, many Saturdays of work shifts.
Glad to hear it. Yep.
So
we try.
Today we're going to be talking about, generally speaking, horror comics, some of the impacts that they had, and some of the great story arcs that we've had over the years that have some horror concepts to them, such as Inferno from Marvel back in the 80s.
Okay.
Yeah, and as you could appreciate back in the day when comics wouldn't cost you an arm and a leg.
Don't even get me started.
The only reason I had no problems giving Eric July $30 for Isom #1 was,
Yeah.
you know, and
what was funny about that one was that, if you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, that started off at 25, right? Did it initially?
Like
yeah,
I don't.
I was telling people about it. I said it felt like the price went up over the time of the campaign, because I was like, oh, all right, 25 makes sense, and then I saw 30. I was like, all right, I can understand that. Then when I saw it clock it out at 35, I was like, whoa, no. But
he might have anticipated it being less, and then the cost for production probably hit him, especially with everything with the pandemic being, going up in price. And the quality of the book, though, he did not skimp on that. I will give him that.
Oh yeah. No, I've heard from a bunch of my friends who've gotten it. It's like, a lot of them are concerned about whether the price is sustainable at 35, but it wasn't a question of the quality of it. And like I said, I'll say this. I'll say this is that I think a lot of people underestimated that he was going to, I think, be a little bit arrogant about how he went about going into comic book publishing. Like, I think they thought he was treated like anybody could do it. And I know from and I won't mention people's names, people that he actually reached out to for assistance and consulted with. He really did his homework and got quality people on board. So
the difference was he had his shit together already.
Yeah,
he had it all ready to go.
He's a solid human
press
being.
Publish, and he was done. A lot of these guys that get into it's like, oh, I got an idea, and I got we're going to do this and that. And I said, well, who's the artist? We're gonna get somebody. Jay Lee. We're gonna get Jay Lee to do it. It's like, what the fuck, dude? You got to get yourself together. You got to organize better than this before you ever launch anything.
He talked to all the right people. There's one person I know who basically sent him to the right person, and he talked to the right people, and he did his homework and did his research. And I think sometimes you have to be a little careful with people when there's. And I'm not gonna what does the kid say? I'm not gonna stand for him too hard, but I will say this: I think his social media persona can lead you to underestimate him, and I think that's just what happened to a lot of people. Like I tell people all the time, I said a lot of people got Eric July videos out there that are gonna age as well as Dorian Gray when you look at that picture. It's just like, dude, he just it just blew it. He blew it out of the park. Like, I don't personally agree with his politics, but you have to admire the hustle and the way he went about this. And it's like, even though I don't think he's going to be knocking down the doors of DC and Marvel anytime soon. But what I tell people, I said, the reason why he's a threat and the reason why you have to pay attention is he moved 25,000 units at the base level, at the base tier.
Yeah.
That's when you look at, crowdfunding campaigns, I'd almost have to say that's unheard of. And with a few people I talk with about it, it's like, look, it did better. I think you can argue it did better than the Berserker campaign. And that's Keanu Reeves and what was it? Keanu Reeves, Matt, what was that guy's Matt Kent and Ron Gardy. And the concept was John Wick basically meets Conan the Barbarian or whatever it was. And it's like, this really blew it out of the water. So, it's not going to be, a lot of people keep saying to me, well, Jermaine, How's yours going to go? And I said, look, I said, Eric July is not my problem. Eric July is Black Stance Entertainment problem. Okay. That is not our problem. I am not trying to compete with that on that level, because there's a lot more to when we talk about there being like an overnight success. That's not the overnight success that a lot of people are thinking it is. There's a lot of work and a lot of buildup that went to getting to that point. And you don't knock any of it, but you got to really kind of see it for what it is and understand what you can replicate from success and what you really can't. You really can't, just for no other reason than the time and effort he put into building that audience. But yeah, that's
I think what a lot of people were really kind of cautious because he was so successful, just blew it out of the water.
Yep.
Is he going to do anything else? You know, it's like, oh, is this a one and done? Is it, is he made so much money now that he's like got FU money and he can just do,
Oh, he's definitely got FU money. The struggle's over.
He paid off his mom's car.
Struggle's over.
I don't know if you guys saw that, but I guess he posted the text message between him and his mom, and she's like, "Oh, now, thank you for paying off my car, sweetie. Oh, no problem. Now I got to start giving you, my payments not to the bank, it's to you now." He's like, "Mom, you don't have to pay me back." Yeah, he's just a stand-up human being. I know some people that know him fairly well, and they just say he's just good people all around.
Yeah, it's my wife and I got married, and they didn't quite understand my financial situation. They just thought that I'm doing pretty well, and that was, I don't really talk about the money. I don't talk about money and stuff like that very much. But one of the things I want to do as a wedding gift is I wanted to pay off her close family. I wanted to pay off their mortgages and the car payments. And because I knew that they were really having a hard time. And that's what they thought. They're like, oh, well, we just pay you instead. No.
Yeah.
No, you don't get it. you don't get it. This is part of my wedding gift, and but it's a different mindset when you get into that tier, and a lot of people don't understand. And it really marks what kind of a person you are at that level. And
as far as I'm aware too, he's planning on building.
He's a good guy.
Doing a actual company, not just a one and done, and not just ISOM. He wants to.
Oh, that was one of the tiers. No, exactly. That was one of the tiers. The tiers were that they reach certain levels. Basically, he'd be able to walk out of there with a publishing company. And honestly, with the raise that he did, it's like at this point he should be able to realistically do a line of basically what you consider a real line is if you have 4 monthly titles, at least 4 regular titles coming out. And there's no reason at this point, if he just reduces the page count back down, that he shouldn't be able to take a real run at basically running a small press company. So it's just a question of whether he's going to pivot or not. Like I said, the thing with July is that you have to look at it more like it's sort of like someone who's a political influencer who's doing comics as merch. And I think that's what moved a lot of the sales. And there's nothing wrong with that. So now the question is like I tell people, it's like, it took me a long time to realize that, why were people paying $30 for coffee mugs for a PBS fundraiser? I'm like, who would pay $30 for a coffee mug? And somebody had to smarten me up and say, no, they're not paying for the actual coffee mug. They're buying a mug to support what PBS does. Right. And that's kind of like went on with the books. Now, at this point, like you said, now the question becomes, because for a lot of people, it feels like it's too good to be true. But the question is that now is he going to deliver? And I think up until this point, I don't think that's a question. I don't get the sense that he's doing this as a, I've made the money and now I'm going to run. It's like, this is like a animated concepts. I throw around the phrase turtle money. I said, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to do turtle money. And the thing is that I think he's really got turtle money at this point. So the sky's the limit. It's up to him now. He's competing against himself. And that's always a good place to be.
Like you said, he wouldn't necessarily say he beat out Berserker, but he did better in a way. He's done better than Ethan Van Sciver and Cyberfrog.
Yeah, he's moved more units, and that was the thing. That's what a lot of people. I was like, guys, you can feel how you want to feel about this dude. I said, this dude moved. If you looked at that bottom tier and what he collected, and because it was really more what he moved at his base tier that got him to 3 million, as opposed to the higher tiers, which is typical of most crowdfunding campaigns. Most crowdfunding campaigns, it's like they sell out that higher tier, and that's what gets them over the top. Not with this cat. So that means he had 25,000 people buying. So even if he goes down, like usually you go, when you're doing like the models and stuff, you go down like maybe, and Pele can speak to this, being a retailer, even if he goes down 20% on the next issue, he's still flying high. So it's just the pricing. That was the only key complaint I heard from a lot of people was they were like, yeah, I did 35 this time, but I don't know if I'm willing to part with 35 next time. So that's the only thing I think he's got to watch out for. And now he's got the book out in the direct market, because I was looking at mycomicshop.com today. So I know Lone Star Comics is carrying it on their website, and they're carrying it. And I thought that what he was going to do is, once he went to the direct market, especially what he did with what he raised just from the crowdfunding thing, I thought he might have gone more the Kirkman route with Firepower, and at least put out the graphic novel around anywhere between 10 to 15. I thought that would have made sense, seeing that you already kind of made a lot of your money up front. So I was a little disappointed to see that it was on Lone Star or mycomicshop.com for 35. But I think he's got to figure out that pricing strategy quick. To keep this going. Yeah, but it's not a question of the quality. A lot of people I knew before it came out, before they got it, they were worried about the quality. And I was like, guys, I don't know if that's going to be really a concern, but everyone's cool with the quality, but it's that price, man. He's got to figure that out quick. Yeah.
It's nice to see though that someone can come up with a concept, implement it, and actually be successful with it, especially in this day and age with comics just being in the state that they're in overall. I'm not, as I said to Pele earlier, I'm not much of a collector these days. I just have a tendency to read a lot of trade paperbacks.
Gotcha.
It just makes it easier. Here's the story. I don't have to dig out multiple books to read. I can just pull the one off the shelf and read it. It just makes my life a little easier. And reading some of the current, well, I wouldn't say current, but more modern stuff, I'm sitting there going, what? How could you do it? No, this makes zero sense. Like, I mean, me and Doc have talked about the X-Men a bunch, and we're both in agreement. The whole Krakoa era is just fucking pathetic.
Oh, it's bad.
You took away any stakes that they could have had. Yeah. And out of all the books Marvel put out over the years, the X-Men books always seem to have, I wouldn't say bigger stakes, because of that the Avengers dealt with a lot more of the world-ending type scenarios.
Right.
But they had more important stakes. More character deaths happened in the X-Men books than I think any other title that Marvel's ever done. Mm-hmm. I think the next one to catch up to it would maybe be Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing with the X-Men. I mean, the whole tragedy of the whole Krakoa era is that it was like, to me, the big thing was, I thought it felt like they were really going to start to introduce the X-Men and have them be involved with the larger Marvel universe, the larger universe, like, not so much off to the sidelines like they were for pretty much most of their existence from like pretty much the Claremont era. It was like kind of like what you said. It's like they had important stakes, but it wasn't like larger stakes, because they weren't always necessarily participating with the larger Marvel universe. Mm-hmm. So, back when I would talk about, I said my favorite one was Fantastic Four and X-Men, because I was like, that was the closest that we got to seeing like what the new status quo of the X-Men was going to be, operating in the larger Marvel universe. And then it just went, we all know why now, but it just went sideways so freaking quick. And that was a book that, like a lot of times we sit around and we talk about, sort of the declining industry, how certain dynamics don't occur anymore. But it's like, I've said it before and I'll keep saying it because it was true. That was the first time I was walking into comic shops. And I remember like having those kind of conversations I used to have like back in the 80s and the 90s, where you walk in the stores like, yo, man, did you just read that last issue of the X-Men? Oh man, I can't wait till the next one come out. Oh, what do you think you're going to do with this and that going over there? I have not experienced that kind of buzz about a book in a long time in terms of going to comic shop. You just go in, either if you have a pull list, pull your books, this and that. Maybe you talk about what's going on in TV and the movies, but in terms of talking about an actual comic book being sold at an actual comic book store and being excited about what's going on and what's coming up, they really had captured lightning in the bottle with that. And then for it to just go so horribly wrong. It's so
in so many ways too.
In so many ways. It was just
House of X, Powers of X started off okay. I was like, all right, we'll see where this goes. And by the time they got to Ten of Swords, I was like, this makes no goddamn sense.
No sense.
And I think I forgot who I said it to. I might have even said it to Doc. It came across as, we're trying to get two characters laid. Let's get
Well,
Apocalypse laid, and Saturnine is trying to get into Captain Britain's pants again.
yeah.
Really? That's what this was all about? And
But it's not even good telenovela. You know what I mean? It's not even like good It's not even like good romance. It was just a lot of it, you know. And I think it does a disservice to fan fiction because I've read a bit of fan fiction. But it's like it had at a certain point, it had no point. It was like, you know, it just had no point. And it was like it didn't deliver on any of the promise of House of X and Powers of 10. And it's just really, you know, we're just really getting from the outside this you know, you just get this view, this understanding that editorial and in the comics industry in general is just in a shambles.
I mean, they got to the Hellfire Gala, and I just went, nope, I don't care anymore.
Nope, I
was
done long
anymore.
before that. Yeah, I was done long before that.
They could, the X-Men could die like they were fated to in the late 60s.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I would not be sadder because I still have all the good runs from back in the day to go back and read.
Yeah, because it's like Excalibur was the only one I was picking up, and that's because I like Marcus Toe. But then it gets to a certain point because, you know, when you start to do your spring cleaning and your winter cleaning, and it's like you have artists that you like, but sometimes the stories are so bad, it's like, man, I just love you, bro, but this run got to go. And it's just like, because there's just nothing to it. And I don't think even good artists who have good storytelling, who are good draftsmen, and that means like storytelling and style, there's some of this stuff you just simply can't salvage because it's just not, they're not talking about it. It's not entertaining, first of all. That's the first thing. It's not entertaining. And they really have nothing to say. So, you know, I mean, that's a tragedy.
It's funny how we went from, and to kind of to segue into one of the topics of conversation, shall we say, for today.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the event of Inferno, which was a pretty X-exclusive book for the most part. It did have Spider-Man and Daredevil in it, but the Avengers, I don't think, were involved. No one else in the Marvel Universe is really involved, even though it's like, oh, hey, New York City's turning into a demonic hellscape. Don't worry about that. We got to go deal with Dr. Doom. But that opened up so many storylines going forward.
Yep.
You know, Mr. Sinister gets introduced really right before that with the Mutant Massacre. And that pretty much led into Inferno, and then you opened up stuff for New Mutants with Magic and Limbo. You opened up Madeline Pryor's story turning into the Goblin Queen going forward, and they did so well leading up to it too. Even in just singular standalone issues of the X books, you slowly started seeing that stuff creeping in. They started, you know, Sims and Nastir started turning Madeline Pryor through the computer, and, you know, Sinister started to become more and more prevalent as a character instead of just somebody in the background pulling the strings. You know, it reintroduced X Factor to the X-Men. You know, and it was just, personally, it's one of my favorite crossover events.
Yeah, because it's really offbeat. I mean, when you think about it, it's like for an X-Men book, it's really offbeat in terms of the subject matter and the characters involved. Because I remember reading, I think I was in high school at the time. Yeah, I was in high school, probably my sophomore year when I was reading that, and I had a teenage crush on Ileana as the demon child, I think she was, or something like that.
Dark Child.
Dark Child. And I was like, yeah, I don't care. I didn't even know I was into that, but I'm into it. But it was just like really, it was a really offbeat story that even with the X-Men mythos, it worked well. It's something that even I think if lesser hands tried it today, it would be almost like a lot of dissonance in terms of matching it up with the X-Men brand. But I think Claremont and everybody involved, they really handled it well, because part of what Inferno also has to deal with is that Great Magic limited series that came out so many years before, Storm and Ileana, which was another like off the beaten path kind of a thing, but worked really well within the lore, within the X-Men lore. You know, it was a one-off at the time, but it had far-reaching consequences for the series going down the line. And I highly recommend that, since we're talking about horror. Yeah, if you haven't read Storm and Ileana Magic, you need to check it out, because it's messed up. It's
I do have
messed
to
up.
actually go back and read that. It's been a while.
Yeah.
It also seems too with the X books that they delved more into the horror side of things more frequently than other books did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when
Yep.
you have they've interacted with Dracula and vampires multiple times over the years. You had
Mm-hmm.
Inferno. You have all the Limbo stuff.
Yep.
There was they only used the character once that I recall, and they used him in an annual. I think his name was Horde or something like that.
Not familiar with that one.
I'm gonna have to look it up because I always forget it. But even with that, we went from the horror comics of the earlier days. It was annual number 11,
Mm-hmm.
X-Men annual number 11, and the character's name is Horde. It's his first and only appearance, but that kind of had a little bit of a horror bent to it too, almost like a monkey's paw situation where he would appeal to what they wanted most in life and then twist it on them.
Yep.
Like one of the things was with Psylocke, this is before she went Ninja Psylocke, her feeling like she was fragile, you know, in her mind, she was a fragile human being because of things in her past. And he exploited that. And eventually he literally turned her into glass.
Wow. Nice. Okay. I got to check it out. No, I haven't. Yeah. I'm looking at it now. And Alan Davis drew this. All right. I'm going to have to pick this up.
It's a nice little one and done story, which is something I think these days too most comics can't seem to do anymore. Everything has to be a crossover. Everything has to be leading up to the crossover. Everything has to be the aftermath of the crossover event. Yeah. It's like, can we just get back to some one and done stories?
No, and I think Pele could speak to this. So, you know, over Amity Concepts, we started a little pop-up shop, Secret Identity, and it's like, and I'm finding out real quick. You know, I did a little scalping today at some local comic stores on the dollar bin boxes. What I realized is I have to start picking up, like, the first thing is you ask somebody what's your favorite character. They'll tell you what your favorite character is. But then the next thing becomes they want a complete story. So they don't want it's like you can't and not to break the run that how we collectors do it, but it's like, they kind of want to, they look and they go, okay, this is number 1, and is that number 4 or 5, and does that look like from the cover the whole story is there? And I think go ahead.
No, some of our best sales are series. We'll actually set a set together of the first, if it's like like a 70s series anthology or something like that, it's not usually a problem because anthologies don't usually carry over from one book to the other. But if you have, like some of them they do, and then you just want to make sure that all those books are there in that, all the grades are similar and, you sell them together as a lot. And that makes all the difference in the world. You can't sell individual issues out of a series. We did really well with some of the 70s and 80s Batmans by the series went on forever. So what we do is just chop out the whole series, and we'd say, okay, this 60 issues of Batman are a series, and we just, we'd sell them together as a series. And it works. It works, because people love the Hunt. I love the Hunt, but when it really gets down to brass tacks, most people who read comics aren't hunters.
Exactly.
They want to read. If they could either buy the omnibus or buy the individual comics. And what we've noticed from people lately is they're kind of a little bit of both. They want to read the old comics, but at the same time, they like the idea that they can buy something, enjoy it, put it away, then get it out in 10 or 15 years, and it's worth more. And that I think is really making a big difference now, because a lot of people hadn't really thought about those comics as being collectible long-term.
So let me ask you this then. So now with me, I'm dealing mostly with more, I'll say, and I don't mean this in any way derogatory, like normies. So a lot of them, so a lot of times it'll be that little kid, they just like Spider-Man. Well, I like Spider-Man. So it's like, okay, they'll pick up the cover and you want to kind of, so like, if there was like a Indiana Jones style bunker where basically all of the true believer stuff was still sitting there. I would go raid it,
Yeah.
basically pull it
Yeah.
out and just here. This is for your kid, or even some of the about to reach out to people out like some of the older like probably 80 stuff, but stuff that just really you get like a good Superman action comic story, which is like this is the story 22, 24 pages, one and done kind of a thing. Because a lot of what I'm running into with people is that they want something that looks like a comic. And that's
Right.
literally what they talk about. So it's like, as much as I love my grim and gritty era stuff and the more adult stuff, it's like when you're doing like, say, a neighborhood market or even some of these outdoor events, when people are walking up, they're just like, I want something that looks like an Archie comic. And to them, what looks like an Archie comic is not the Archie stuff, even though I like it that who's doing art, what Archie's doing now. They're actually looking for that old school kind of Archie where he's got like the crosses for his hair that show his hair. They're looking for like that Dan DeCarlo stuff. They want something that looks like that. Or they want a Spider-Man comic that looks bright, or even a Batman comic. Some of these covers that from some of the stuff I have is a little too dark. But it's like it's really more like they want to get it. They just want the character, they want the story, and they want to be able to, like you said, like just read and just read. And then if it's something
Right.
where now I've got some guys who come up there and they pretend like they're normies. That's they pretend like they're normies. And it's like, bro, come on, I'm already giving this comic for like less than it's worth. Just give up money and get out of here. But it's like. But it's interesting, like you said, there's people who like to hunt, and I think that's the benefit of something of like what we're trying to do with Secret Identity being out there is it's like because a lot of guys, what I hear from them is they just haven't been to a comic store in years because they aren't really around, and so the hunters come from you get one and you like get bit by the bug, then you go to the comic store and then you find the rest of the run and find the rest of the story. Yeah.
You know what I found was I tried a little experiment a while back.
I know because
used
I
to
never
have
followed up with you on that. Yep.
I
Go
used to have all the comics in a series in one place in the bargain bins. And like say Detective or Batman or long series. And I would have all of them like in one place. I was like, okay, this is the Batman, this is Detective, and I'd kind of have them close together. Maybe not in numerical order because people move stuff around and shit. When you're talking dollar books, they move them around like crazy all over the place. And I found out though that if I chopped them up, and I put like part of them here, part of them in these other section of boxes in the bargain area, and some of these others, some of the Batmans over here in this other part of the bargain area, I sold more of them because they got excited they'd find another batch of Batman in the bargain bin. Like, oh, here's another section of Batman. Oh, here's another section of Spider-Man. Oh my gosh, and they're like, they get more excited. And also they'd run across other things that they may not be looking for, but they see it and they want to buy it, rather than just sticking in that one part of the bargain section. So I started just moving them around. And then every once in a while, I'd drop like a $50 book in the bargain section.
Now you're gonna make me chop my books back up again. Now I just went the other way, man. We started putting them all in the wood. No, it's okay. You started putting, but I think you're right because you're right because with this last one we had a little bit more. We had a lot more foot traffic than the other venue that we did. Was that they will actually flip through everything. They will flip through everything. So you're right you're right. I think you're right about this. We'll try that out the next couple. It's the idea of like they're going through. It's like, oh yeah, I got this here. Cool. And I think there's something to that. I think you're onto something with that one. So we'll have to give that a try and see. But
and one thing I'll do is I like not do anything special, but like a $50, $100 key. And I would stick it in the My Little Ponies. I'd stick it in, I'd stick it like in, Muppet Babies or some shit like that. And make sure they look through the whole bin, all the bins, because they know it's out there.
It's like a treasure hunt.
You got anything special in there this week? I said, I've always got something special in there, my dude. That just, and all the nerds, they're all sitting there, with their butt cracks showing, digging through the bins, and stuff like that. It's like, and they always spend more money. The longer that you get them to stay there, the more money they're going to spend. And you're not ripping them off because they're $1 a piece.
Yep.
And you just want them to buy more of the $1 a piece stuff. And the more people that are in the shop, the better it is, because an empty shop is sad. If somebody comes into a shop and it's empty, they don't want to stick around.
Yep.
You know, but if they see 4 or 5 other guys in there digging through comic boxes, they're like, "Oh yeah, there's some good stuff in here."
Yeah,
so
going on.
Yeah,
my
so you
neck
want
of
to
the
keep them.
woods.
Yeah, you want to keep them in there digging as long as you possibly can, and you want to reward them for digging.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's good. Definitely.
My neck of the woods. I'm from New York,
My
Hudson Valley,
hometown.
upstate, Hudson Valley area. Thank God I don't live in the city.
yeah,
I don't even like going to the city for anything these days.
What?
Never really have. It's kind of a pain in the ass. I mean, yeah, okay, I got to take the train down, deal with Grand Central.
Well,
God forbid driving down there like one of my buddies does. It's like you're a madman.
You're insane. Yeah, forget that. Yeah. I live in the city. You don't.
And there used to be a fair amount of comic book shops in my area. I can think of growing up, there was at least 5.
there was an awesome one in Syracuse called Orange Comics or Orange Man Comics or something like that, and they were awesome. But go ahead, sorry.
Now it's come down to, I think there's only 3 in the area. One shop got switched owners 2-3 times, and the last guy who owned it, he was a comic book fan, and his wife absolutely was not. And she didn't get the industry, she didn't get the business, she didn't get any concepts of it at all. So she had a hand in driving customers away and tanking the business just by not understanding.
Right.
One of the other ones was a overall more of a geek shop, as I like to call it, role-playing stuff, Magic the Gathering cards, comic books, all that kind of stuff. The owner was just a scumbag because I worked for him at one point. Now no longer has any ownership at stake in the store because, well, he fucked up and didn't pay taxes. But I saw this guy, and I didn't realize it at first until I started working for him. I was doing something for him, and I was in the back of the store, and he comes walking back. He's like, you'll appreciate this. You like old Silver Age stuff. He had a big stack of comics in his hand. I was like, oh yeah, what's that? He's like, a run of Hulk 1 through like 60.
Ooh.
I was like, oh, wow, that's cool. Hulk? Yeah.
Hulk. Well, the first series of Hulk, it was like 6 issues, but you might mean 102 to something.
Whatever it was a big run of the Hulk.
Yeah.
And, it was definitely older Hulk because, like, the first couple of books, he was gray.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what'd you pay for all that? He's like, $100. Ooh, what? Yeah. I was looking at him like, what?
Oh, they broke.
And he liked to take advantage of people who didn't know what they had.
Oh yeah. My God.
I mean, I understand that to a little degree.
Yeah, but
no, I've never been.
And it was just somebody whose relative passed away.
Oh no.
And they were just looking to get rid of stuff that person had because they had no interest in it. And
I'll tell you how bad that bothers me is that I had an elderly lady came in. Her son died in Iraq, and she had all of his old comics, had all of his old D&D books and everything like that. And she brought them in, and I went through them. I wasn't very careful about it, but I did go through them, and I made her a good offer. It was like about 50 to 60% of book, and wholesale, standard wholesale. Yeah. And I gave her the money. She was very grateful. She could pay for all of his expenses and still had some money left over to help for house payments and stuff. And she was great. I think it was like about $18,000, $19,000. And she was very pleased. And then I went through the last few boxes. I hadn't really looked through everything as tightly as I normally do. And that's where he had his keys. His big keys. Hulk 180, 181, 182, X-Men 94 through 150. He had all of his old Daredevils. He had all in about 3 or 4 short boxes. I hadn't gone through those yet. And I was like, holy shit. I said, did you find out anything about that old lady? And no, I had to write her a check. And And so I had to do some investigative work, track this old lady down.
That's right.
It took me like 5 days to track this old lady down. And I came up, I walked up to her front door with me and one of the assistant managers, and I knocked on the door, and she's like, "Hello? Oh yeah, it's you. What do you need?" And I said, "It's about that check that I gave you." Her eyes got real big, and because I could tell she's going to say, "Oh, is it bad? What's going on here?" And I said, "No, ma'am. I can't in good conscience give you what I gave you." And she's still looking at me. She says, "Well, I've got it now, and I've already used some of it." And I said, "No, you don't understand. I can't in good faith just give you just that much.
I have to add to it."
Yeah, I pulled the other check out of my pocket. It was $28,000 that I handed to her. And she just stared at me. She just stared at big old huge eyes. She started weeping and everything like that. I just honestly believe that the people that screw others like that, when they know what they have and they take advantage of them, that there's going to be some kind of hell for them.
Yeah, you reap it yourself. Yep.
But like I said, the guy no longer has a stake in that store, no longer owns it.
Yep.
His business partners, are like, "No, done with you. You've screwed up on the taxes and fucked yourself, and we're getting away from you."
Karma will get you.
Yeah.
So,
that's right.
There's another shop in my neck of the woods that's been around us for as long as I can remember, and I'm 46. So, and they're still doing good. My one buddy who collects goes there a lot because they do what you do, Pele. They'll pull out, here's the whole story arc. Here's this whole story, and sell that as a series. And my buddy likes that because if he's not buying either slabbed comics, that's a big one for him, buying slabbed keys, buying books that he always liked as when he was growing up that he doesn't have anymore, getting them either slabbed or just finding them again, or he'll buy the entire series. He doesn't like trade paperbacks so much for that. He'd rather have the individual books.
Right. Yeah, with him. Yep.
Well, even the old trade paperbacks are getting to be valuable now. That's kind of complicates things. But I never would have expected
because back in the day they didn't release that many of them.
No, it was like 100. They were like not 100,000 run like comic books. The old trade paperbacks had like 1,000, 1,500. Some of the early ones, and they're the New Mutants' first appearance is a trade paperback.
Yep.
A lot of those old trade paperbacks now are just they're worth hundreds, sometimes thousands of some of the really rare ones. That makes everything more complicated.
When my uncle owned his shop in the 90s, he was one of those silly people who got involved because of the speculation of the market at the time, both on that and sports collectibles.
Yep.
And well, he only was in business for about 6 months.
Ouch.
But I remember, I'd go down because go down to where my grandmother lived down on Long Island. And, I'd go work for him, for a little while each day when I was down there visiting. And he was always like, "Oh, yeah, if you want me to order anything from me," he just dropped a big catalog in front of me, like, "Here, and let me know what you want out of this." And I remember, too, the trade paperback section was not large.
No.
At all. And, I mean, I still have some of the ones I had him order for me, like the X-Men Ice Guardian crossovers, which included, like, a New Mutants annual, an X-Men annual, and then the X-Men vs. Alpha Flight miniseries.
Yep.
And that was cool. I mean, now it's like, now everything seems to be, as multiple people have said, they're writing for the omnibus, they're writing for
the trade.
The trade, and it's like, it's not working, guys. It hasn't worked. Because not only are people getting tired of it, it's the stories themselves aren't good. They're not worth collecting into one book like that.
Yeah, my daughter, it's like she was like, we would go like to Free Comic Book Day, and she would always get excited when she saw Beast Boy Loves Raven, and she would like pick it up. And she would pick it up. And look, I got it. Look, YA's audience, baby. But she would pick it up, and she was like, "I'm just tired." And it's like, "What are you talking about?" So I'm tired of always picking this book up, and it's never the full story. It's always the first part. It's the first part. So for her graduation last year, I finally went out and bought the trade paperback for her, so she could finally read the whole story. But it's like that idea of writing for the trade, which is like, it's like the direct market in some cases was a real boon, but it was also a curse because I think the big two really never thought about like a pipeline or what we now call like an ecosystem. So like for me, like doing something like Secret Identity, it's like it's getting books out there because like you were talking about like just the 3 stores in your area. And that's the thing, like here in Chicago, it's like pretty much I've lived on the south side here and the west side. And no matter where I've lived on both of these places, the nearest comic store, either by car or train, is an hour away.
Ooh,
Literally, hour away. Hour. So now I'm like on the west side where there's one store is a little bit closer, but even now it's like 20 minutes, 20 minutes on a good day, like basically a Saturday morning, right? Between 11 and 12 to get to that one. But there's nothing in the sense of like, oh, I would walk into like in New York a bodega or in back in the day, if I was in Jersey in a mom and pop shop, would there be a little spinner rack? And I'm not saying you got to go back to the spinner racks. I'm just saying they were available. And you would, and me as a kid in 1980, I would come across the new Teen Titans #7. I go, oh man, this is great. And then I go visit with some relatives down in Maryland, and I would discover a comic shop. Oh, this is great. So we go see there's a comic shop back in New York. So there's not this sense of like a pipeline of where there's the discovery of a comic book, you get somebody hooked into it, and then if they want to move to the thing of basically move from becoming like, say, I guess just a casual reader to a hobbyist, there's no real pathway for that anymore. It's either you go to the comic shop to get the comics or you don't. And I think what I've been finding being out there is people like they walk by, they see it. It's like they get real interested in the comics real quick, buy a couple. And in some cases, I've directed people to other comic shops. But again, it's just, yeah, but just so you know, dude, it's like 30, 40 minutes out when we're at 40 to 40 hour out right now. But it's
All
like,
three of
you
the ones in
know,
my area are at least a half hour away.
yeah, exactly. It's just not convenient. It's not convenient. And so, you know, because someone was talking to me before, we had a really good day this past Sunday. We're out at a City of Chicago event. So I just don't think normies are going to buy comics. And I said, I don't know if I agree with that. And I got proven out on this day. I mean, they'll buy them, but it's just a question of what are you selling them and where and at what price. You know, and that's what it is. And I'm talking about introducing people into the hobby. I'm not talking about when somebody becomes a hobbyist. That's different. It's like for me, it's like if I say I'm gonna, you know, like you're talking about X-Men Annual #11, I'm gonna go find X-Men Annual #11. One, because I never read it, and two, because it's Alan Davis. That's a totally different thing. But in terms of getting people to the point where they can become like me, there just needs to be something out there to foster that, and that's something that the industry is sorely lacking right now.
I mean, growing up, I didn't go to comic book stores.
Exactly.
The first one I went to, I must have been like, I don't know, 9, 10, and it was down visiting my grandmother on Long Island.
It was
whenever
16,
I bought
17 for me.
comics, it was grocery stores, pharmacies, gas stations, and spinner racks and other places. You know,
I lived in a comic book store when I was like my early teens. That's what I did.
Yeah,
you know, I basically lived there. And as soon as I was like 10 or 11, as soon as my mom would let me ride my bike a few miles from home, I was riding it to the nearest town, and I was living there. I was, you know, any scrap of money that I could get from mowing lawns or doing anything like that, I was spending on comics.
But how did you get into it, Pele? But how did you get into it?
My dad's a comic collector.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
my dad was a comic collector, and he bought, and he was pretty smart collector. He DC mostly, but some Marvel, and I inherited his comic collection later. But you know, he took care of his books. You know, he had them in like Ziploc bags and other types of bags. Didn't have comic book bags at the time, but you know, he took care of his stuff, and you know, it was. And ever since then, I started reading his comics carefully, and you know, and I wanted comics of my own, so I started buying them and collecting them. And I would sleep on the comic book store floors, and they would pay me a little bit of money to organize, you know, and then they paid me a little bit more money to start grading and organizing, and that's what I would do, you know, on the weekends. And then the rest of the week, I was either mowing grass or I was, you know, doing whatever to make money during the summer. And that was my life. And it just never really changed. You know, as soon as I could get into a comic book shop, as far as an adult, you know, I was like, I got into a part ownership in my shop. that I have now. And, you know, I just don't think I can do it anymore. I don't think that I could do without being in a comic book shop anymore. So,
No, it's like for me, you're right. It was early teens when I went away to school out to Massachusetts. And now, fortunately for this guy, it was an empty shop. I mean, he was in business like pretty much all 4 years I was out there at school. I don't know how, because I would make a point of like, school would end like about 3 o'clock on a Friday. I would hop on the bus to go into town. So, basically the last bus would leave out about 8:30 or so. But I would go into town 3 o'clock, 3:30, get there about 4:30, and I just like hang out in the shop the whole time. I was like, I had my own personal library. And it was just like, I bought like, every dime that I earned working at the school shop, the fast food place, pretty much went into me buying comics. And I would sit there and sit in the couch and read. Same thing. I would help him organize. He never paid me, but he would let me read whatever I wanted to in the shop at that point, because pretty much nobody was coming in. But it was just like, that was when it kicked over to the hobbyist thing for me, was once I discovered like that comic shop. And then once I went back to New York, when I went home over vacations and stuff, then I would hunt, then I found Fordham Comics and Forbidden Planet and Jim Hanley's and those stores once I got there. But even with those there, those were humps to get to them. Those were like anywhere from 30 to 45, if not an hour hump to get out there. And then, of course, getting back. But it was like, but you still also had like a lot of newsstands and a lot of bodegas and a lot of other places carrying comics as well. So that's how I discovered, I think it was X-Men 276 was my first Jim Lee X-Men that I got on the newsstand. And I'm like, pick up this cover and I'm like, oh snap, Wolverine, look, he just like cut the mess out of Professor X and then basically went back and started my Jim Lee hunt. So it's like, yeah, it's like it's unfortunate with the direct market. It was a good idea, especially when you look how it first started. I think if I remember the history right, it was like with the guy Phil Suling, where basically he was selling them out of his house or something like that, and basically just like on a non-returnable basis. And then I remember that like coming up in the '80s, you would find out, oh, there's some dude over in the projects. He's got like mad comics he's selling, and like sometimes if they went to ground floor, they'd just be selling you the comics out the window. It was like a little bit more, I don't want to say underground, but it was a little bit more romantic. I guess that's the word I use for it. You just knew guys, they were into comics, and it's like, yeah, if you want to go to that dude's house, you go in there, he'd have like stacks and boxes, whatever you want, he charged the price, and you go out there, and then you would just graduate to like a more formal setting, like a direct market shop. But the way you get into it, it was very much like a community, almost like an underground community, where you kind of like had to know somebody to figure out where to get this stuff at. So, and it just seems like once the industry just started going whole hog into, well, we got a non-returnable market, let's not take any risk in the more mass market. It's like, dude, you just kind of like, you don't understand how your own business works. Like the whole life cycle of a customer in your business works. That's not how it works. So other than that, it's got to be me as a dad and my girls showing interest in comics. That's how you get these two. It's that or Webtoons. So they found Webtoons, which congratulations, Webtoons. I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure how that discovery process worked, but apparently it works well because they got both of them on Webtoons. But it's like, other than that, if it comes to like floppies or trades, whatever, if I don't convert them, it ain't gonna happen. So yeah, that's the way the ball bounces.
I mean, for me, growing up, I remember getting the comics. I want to say the first comic I ever got was someone in my family giving it to me.
Mm-hmm.
Just, oh, kids like comic books. Here's, a Justice League comic or something like that. I think it was a Justice League comic too. But then a friend of my uncle's who lived across the street from my grandmother was into what used to be into comics. He was a big fan of Iron Man and the Avengers. So whenever went to visit, I just go across the street and borrow comics from him. Unfortunately, he did not take care of them.
Yep.
He just left them in a not bagged of any kind in a big cardboard box down in his basement.
Right.
And
I mean that's where it was. Yeah.
Yep. But I got to read some really cool stuff well after they were published and before it became like, oh hey, I got to read Iron Man #1. I got to read Iron Man and Submariner the one shot for that. I got to read really good runs of the Avengers, like the Kree Skrull War era.
Mm-hmm.
So at least I got a good base foundation
Mm-hmm.
of what was good comics and good storytelling. But I think storytelling as a whole in entertainment's kind of taking a hit lately.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's bad
Be it the
now. It is
storytelling of
really bad.
comics to video games, and I'm a big gamer. I mean, my concept of a story in video games can be weird sometimes, as I'm a fan of FromSoft games. They do a
Mm-hmm.
very abstract storytelling method where
Yep.
there are no cutscenes, there aren't very many dialogues, although they did change that a bit with Elden Ring. But it's
Mm-hmm.
telling you the story, not showing you the
Showing
story,
you the story.
and I
Yep.
appreciate that. Even pro wrestling, I grew up in the '80s.
Mm-hmm.
If you weren't a pro wrestling fan in the '80s, it was almost that falls into the same category as how many people did you know that didn't own a Nintendo in the '80s? Not many.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, not too
Right.
many.
And it was the
Yep.
same thing with being a pro wrestling fan, especially in the Hulk Hogan era. I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people don't realize that back then he literally was fucking everywhere.
Yep. He was
Oh
wrestling.
yeah,
It's like
he
people who don't even
was.
follow wrestling, they know Hulk Hogan. They know Hulk Hogan. Grandmas, but people could care less. They know Hulk Hogan. Yep.
And
No,
I
no,
think
and you're right. That's the thing. But that's because of syndication. Because that stuff was on. You sit on a Saturday afternoon, you could click through, and it's like, oh, wrestling. And I mean, and that was even like with the '90s boom. It was
Yeah, that
like,
was before WrestleMania. I mean, that
yeah,
was
yeah,
like, yeah,
yeah.
that was even before that. I mean, my
Mm-hmm,
grandfather was like Saturdays were
mm-hmm.
wrestling, and then
Yep,
Sundays was Southern Continental Wrestling,
yep.
and that was a different thing. But he liked the Sunday wrestling better than he did the Saturday wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
I learned who people like Wildcat Wendell Cooley were.
Yep.
The people like that. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
that was really bizarre shit,
Yeah.
but it's not like today, it's
No, yeah, because
very,
it's all one. It's all one. One hand rule. One hand rules them all. And remember, I mean, but that was the thing. Like when it came to the '90s, like I had gotten out of wrestling, out of that, out of the '80s of it, and kind of fell out of it. But the only reason I got back into wrestling again was actually through my younger brothers because they were sitting around one Saturday morning. And then, we're sitting there one Saturday, we like flipping through channels, and all of a sudden we see this dude that looks like the Crow, and this big giant dude like fighting off 20 guys in the middle of a ring. And then we just started watching that joint. So I was like, well, what are you talking about? So then I started checking out WCW. Then I started seeing all these WCW like Wolfpack tags up on buildings all over the neighborhood. And then I said, well, and I was working in the video store at the time. So I was like, maybe I should start checking out these WWE things we got on the home video. And that's when I get bit by the Degeneration X bug just as they were breaking up. I love the theme song, love the group. And I think it was 15 when they broke up. That was the first time I got exposed to DX. But then being the collector that I am, I got the bug. So I just went backwards and started hunting down every DX appearance to learn about the group to get caught up. But it's like, that's how this stuff happens. It's like somebody has to discover it and basically spread it by word of mouth. But it's got to be out there in some kind of like broad mass form. It's just got to be out there for people to discover it. Because if not, then it's almost like, well, if you build it, will they come? Not necessarily. Now that they don't know you built it.
Yeah.
We were talking about Wizards of the Coast before.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's such a mess now. Back when TSR had AD&D, it was just it was a monolith. It was incredible. The fandom was amazing, and it was by its very nature inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
It was by its very nature inclusive. You didn't care what nationality or what gender or whatever the person was that was in your group, because they were going to be playing something that was completely different than that.
Yep.
And, we sell so many old AD&D books. Second edition, first edition, 1.5, Unearthed Arcana, Oriental Adventures, then it gets into second
people are tired
edition,
of
third.
the agenda pushing from Wizards at this point.
And we sell that so much. As soon as I get stuff in, they're gone. And the old modules, they're gone. And the new stuff rots. It absolutely rots.
And it's the price point. I mean, growing up for me, AD&D books were $15 to $18 a piece, depending on the thickness of the book. I think the only one that was 18 was the Dungeon Master's Guide, and it was like twice the size. Now they're like $50 a pop.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're made out of crap, and the bindings fall apart in 2 or 3 years. And I stopped carrying them. We just stopped carrying new D&D. New D&D. We just stopped carrying it. And about probably about a year and a half ago, and Hasbro got mad at us. They're like, you're one of our licensed. You're one of our licensed Magic. How come you're not selling D&D anymore? I said, because it doesn't sell, and the product is substandard.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, that's something like even with running the secret identity thing, it was like, like kind of being at one neighborhood market, one area, and then moving to the other. It's like some of this has to do with you have to know who you're selling to. So it's like, I get the thing of the agenda pushing, because I'm not a big fan of agenda pushing when it steps on good storytelling or it steps on good marketing. And what I mean by marketing is that, are you selling something to the right demographic? There is a demographic that might be they want stuff where, I want to see myself in the product, or I want to see myself in the character, whatever it is. But then you got to make sure you're actually selling it to that customer. Selling stuff like taking elephant shotgun and just saying, we're going to throw it at you, whomever, that's not going to work. So like when I've done the neighborhood market, it's like, and because I got to reach out to those guys. That market is basically, it's more like you have older grandparents, like grandparents types, or older uncles and aunts who basically are looking for comic books to give their younger nieces and nephews. Sometimes they're older kids who they know in the comics, but they want stuff that looks like comics. Or it's other people who are really kind of like, they're just really into manga. So it's like, what I started learning was I can't trot out the Marvel and DC stuff there. Actually, next summer when we do that run again, I'm gonna have to have a lot more manga stuff out there and a lot more, maybe more indie stuff there. But when it came to this other one we did over here in Douglas Park, everybody was about Marvel and DC. People were asking me for stuff. I was like, thanks. And I had this joint sitting there for like the whole summer. Ain't nobody asked me for Green Lantern. Ain't nobody asked me for Green Arrow. Ain't nobody asked me for this and that. And I think what happens a lot of times with these businesses, it's just like they're just like, this is what we're offering. Take it or leave it. And it's like, okay, I'll leave it, because I'm not paying money for that, especially not at that price. And then you said, then on top of that, if it's substandard price. So it's like, the one thing about TSR was that at one point when they realized that sales were slowing down or they weren't doing as well as they should, they actually did do a survey and reached out to the customers, say, what do you guys like about this? They took that information, and then that's what I believe Advanced Dungeons and Dragons came out of. At some point, you have to know who you're selling to and why they're buying it, and even how they're buying it. And I think that's what, especially, getting back to comics with Marvel and DC, it's like, some of the stuff that they put out, I know exactly where to go to sell that stuff. But that's not necessarily every direct market retailer. Like some of that stuff, like the Captain America, was that one that's out now, Sentinel Liberty, the one with Sam Wilson, does just fine at the First Aid Comics over in Hyde Park. Not so much the First Aid Comics at Taylor Street. It's really that simple. But when you're buying them, it's all the same thing, indiscriminate. It's just weird. It's just weird the way they go about doing it. It's like, because I don't even think they understand that some of this stuff is even regional. Like, this in some places, they're just not big into DC. They're not, in some places, it's kind of like wrestling. It's like Chicago's a heel town.
Yeah. Same with Philly.
Exactly.
We're 80-20.
We're
We're 80-20 Marvel DC. And I know where it works and what doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's 70s, 80s, and 90s Marvel, it's going to sell like hotcakes.
Exactly. Yep.
And that's majority of what I buy and what I keep in stock. Yep. And 60s, if the person has money, right. We got 60s more. I got Silver Age. I got lots of Silver Age keys and stuff like that. If you're well heeled, you can get that. But what's still affordable in the late 60s, 70s, 80s, that stuff sells, and it sells like gangbusters. And that tells me I can sell Claremont X-Men, 10
people
times
love
faster.
70s Marvel. I know 10
times faster than I can sell new X-Men.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People love. There's something about those 70s Marvels books. That's like the essence of comics. Like just the look of them, the little boxes with the headshots in them, the Marvel
Oh
Comics
yeah.
group across the thing. It's the color. It's just the layouts of the color. It's just when you show somebody like a 70s, probably up to, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Pele, maybe mid up to 84 Marvels, like maybe like 75 to 84 Marvel. It's like for a lot of people, that's what a comic book looks like to them.
Yeah. That's what it
Yeah.
looks like. And my first comic that I ever bought with my own money, this will tell you where I'm coming from. First comic that I ever bought with my own money was Daredevil 158.
Oh yeah.
First issue Frank Miller came into the book. And I saw it on the stand, like, I'm getting that. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Look at that guy jumping over that tombstone. He's about to jump on
Mm-hmm.
Daredevil. Holy
Yep.
shit, that is amazing. Yep. And I still got it. It's over here hanging on my wall. I'm looking at it right now. Same issue, same copy I bought then. And
I remember all the house ads with that cover.
Oh yeah. And nowadays, it just, I put a copy of that up for sale and it's gone. Because people still love the old Miller stuff like that.
Because it really was like an advertisement for what was going on in the book. It's like, that's what I'm finding with some of the modern stuff is, it's like, okay, guys, I'm glad you went with the fine arts approach in terms of doing these things, but it's like people are looking at this stuff and they don't know what they're buying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, we got Peach Mononoko or whatever her name is. We got her doing a cover, in crayon. Isn't this beautiful? It's like, yeah, I'm sure she's very popular in certain areas and certain spheres, but she's not selling books to my Daredevil fans.
Yeah.
You know who sells books to my Daredevil fans? Frank Miller sells books to my Daredevil fans. Jim Lee sells really well to my X-Men fans. I can tell you who sells to those certain fans. Why the hell aren't you getting them to do these books? I can understand that, Miller, he's getting elderly, and he's
the next
kind
version of it.
He's pretty much DC only now, but it's, you have to stay in. I'm not going to say always stay in that vein, but you can't just abandon. You just can't abandon what works, and
you have to you have to evolve it. You have to keep it contemporary, but you do have to recognize there are certain fundamentals to basically why people are attracted to it and buy this stuff. And it's just like, and like you said, Pele, your market's 80-20 Marvel DC. It's like Chicago, when I'm finding it's like, it's a little bit all over the place. So, after we do this initial run, next time going out next year, I have a better idea of like what to stock and what to have available when. It's like some people just come out of left field with stuff. Like, this last one, it's like, we have any Jean Grey books? I'm like, well, first of all, you have no idea about comics. Could you ask for a Jean Grey book? But clearly, wherever that's coming from, I say, okay, so we started a box and we just had like stuff that we figured be like, okay, what's the book that nobody's asked about you, but you think somebody might come into the left field? We just have that one sitting there just in case. But it's just like you have to get a feel for it. It's like my thing with Marvel and DC is that I just don't feel like they have like an ear to the ground about what's going on in terms of like what
I don't think
people
they want to know.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It seems like, because it's just like, it doesn't seem like it's hard to reach out to people or reach out to retailers or somebody else and just say, hey, look, this is what's working and this is what's not. And this was not working. But it's just like, it's just a really weird thing, so because I'm gonna have to jump off soon, but to bring it back to the horror thing just for a minute, and especially because this is a special occasion, since I'm on with Pele, I haven't been in a stream in such a long time. But in terms of horror comics, it's like the one thing that I want to kick, because I think it might have been the last time we actually were on the stream together. He was the one who convinced me to pick up Deceased.
Yeah,
which has
love
become
that so much.
Oh man, it was like, when that book came out, when I first saw it, because I know Walking Dead was winding down, and I saw like the promo stuff for like Deceased, and it had Batman on it. I was just like, okay, look, DC, really, so now Walking Dead's out, you're trying to get some of that zombie money you think is left on the table. You got Batman over, because I'm not doing this. And so I totally slept on that one. So Pele, we were talking. He was like, "No, you got to get deceased. You got to get deceased, and this and that." And so I was like, but I went out. I bought a couple. And I was like, "Oh damn, he's right. This is good." I went
It's
out.
so raw.
It is.
It was. They had no respect
None.
for anybody, and that was a good thing in this case because no sacred cows.
No.
There was no situation where this person's just gonna be safe because everybody loves them. No, hell no. They not only did that, they turned like the savior of the universe into the greatest threat. And they killed Batman off. They did all this stuff, just bam, 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 and it was just so well executed. It was beautiful. And I don't want
every
to do
death
any
counted.
spoilers, but
but every death counted, and every death hurt. And my favorite one is actually, and I keep it handy, but my favorite one was a deceased, a good day to die, and that one because it's a one shot, but it's like complete story, but it's just like it has such a tragic tone and quality to it. And it's like, but it ties into the rest of the story. It completely ties into the rest of the story. But it was just like Deceased was so good at not only just the main book being good, but all of like the ancillary books being good too, like Unkillables. It's like, okay, if you guys want to do Suicide Squad, right? Could you just please read that and just like rip that off or something like that? But it was like, I don't think there's been one bad Deceased book. The only thing I haven't read is the digital series. I haven't gotten out of those collections.
If DC brought Deceased to the big screen,
oh yeah,
it would kill.
It would.
I mean, literally and figuratively, it would kill. And it would be so they could do a 3-movie series on that, and it would just blow everybody's minds if they did it like in the comics. It just held nothing back. R-rated. Let's do it. R-rated, we're going to swing for the fences. They'd make all the money.
Oh yeah, no, it's like, I said it was one of those things like it's like when Pele was talking about it, I was like, man, and it was only because of Pele, and he was really like, no, dude, you gotta check this out, and it's like literally I think I found like maybe like 4 of the 6 issues, and I read it, and I was like, and I went right back out to the rest of the stores to see what I could hunt down. Had to pay a little bit pricey. That was too bad to go on eBay to.
The Pets issue killed me. It's like the Pets issue killed me too.
That was crazy. Yeah. But it was like one, it trades on your nostalgia of the characters. Like for those of us who know the characters, it's like. But I think on the other hand, because of the way that Taylor wrote it, it equally has a lot of meaning for those of us who know the characters well. But it's a totally solid story if you've never read a DC comic before, in terms of just being a good horror story.
I don't like Taylor's other books. I don't like anything else that he's ever written. But he can do post-apocalyptic stuff like nobody else, especially in the DC universe. I mean, if I'll tell you what, if he came out with anything that has zombies in it, I'm gonna buy it. And but anything else, I'll pass. That's okay.
I got you.
I'll pass.
Yeah, because I'm not like real big into horror books, but another one I believe is a horror book that I enjoyed immensely, not only just from the TV show, but The Walking Dead, which it's like that has become such a seminal pop culture property, if you will, but just such a great storyline. And then what I love the story behind The Walking Dead, at least the legend that Kirkman tells, which is that basically he had so many other books getting canceled before. He figured he should just jam as much story as possible into the first 6 issues. So at least that way he got the story out in case he got canceled in 6. And I was
the guy that loved the comic series, but never really completely got into the TV series.
And it's funny because people are like that. Yeah.
It got so far out there that I was just like, around season 5, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, season 6. It's like the first the first 3 seasons are tight. It's like, and I'm sorry, at this point, if you haven't watched, I'm spoiling because my favorite, I believe it was season 2, but it's like it is one of I said I don't before I die on my bucket list, I have to give the "This isn't a democracy anymore" speech. I
Yeah.
don't know what it is. I don't know if I'm doing it with my family. I don't know if I'm doing it at my job. I'm giving that speech verbatim. I'm gonna fuck the situation because it's like, and then it's like, yeah. After a certain point, I think the show kind of loses its way. Like for a lot of people, they got out when Glenn made his unfortunate departure. But yeah, you're right. I think you're right around season 5 or 6. That's when it really decoupled from like the series itself.
It was
But
no
like
longer about the walkers and survival.
no.
It turned into like petty politics between people only, and it's like.
But I think that was because I think pretty much when Rick kind of makes the big, I guess he kind of reveals what I would say is like the theme of the series, which is like we are the Walking Dead. It's like no, it's not them, but we are the Walking Dead. That's kind of like where it feels like maybe after a bunch of people get killed after that, the story should end. It's like once you kind of he offers that perspective. And I think anything you're doing after that is now you just get into, well, let's see how long we can, tap this thing out to see it go. And so I'm trying to think of any other big horror, because I'm not a big horror comics fan, even though I have enjoyed
Tomb of Dracula, Werewolf
Tomb
by
of Dracula.
Night. Yeah. I mean, Werewolf. I'm kind of excited by the Werewolf by Night show, the one show that they're going to be doing on.
Have you seen it yet?
No, not yet. I'm still waiting.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm going to. I haven't seen it yet. I've had the whole thing with my health and everything. I'm going to spend one evening. The wife and I are going to sit down and watch it. But yeah, that's my jam. The old Tomb of Dracula series, love that. Werewolf by Night, loved it. Those are the books that I was telling everybody like 5 years ago to buy.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, you were. Yep, you were.
Like you need to buy these. They're going to be huge, and I don't know.
You also brought up Moon Knight a couple times too.
Yeah, you need to buy these. Oh, I don't know. The old House of Mysteries. Oh, I don't know. And it's now you can't even approach these books without without spending a fortune. And it's like people, you just need to start listening. Please start listening.
That's what my buddy does. He actually keeps an ear out for even just rumors of comic properties that could be made into a movie or TV show, and then he goes and sees where the keys are at, and if he sees them going up a little bit, just as they start to climb slightly, he's when he'll grab them. Yeah. He's done that a few times now. He grabbed first appearance of Sabretooth, which was in an Iron Fist book, right when they announced the Iron Fist show. Yep. Mm-hmm. Not that it was so much of it's a key, but it's not so much of a key for Iron Fist, more so than it is Sabretooth. Yeah. But not that book wasn't kind of pricey to begin with.
It's a tough book too. It's a tough book because it's hard to get in higher grade. It's whitish cover on a certain part of it that gets stained real easy. Most of them are like fine or lower, and if you find one in high grade, it's a great investment. And
you also spent some time looking for first appearance of the werewolf,
Marvel Spotlight 2.
Yep, and then the first appearance of Moon Knight.
Yeah,
he went for that. He was going for some stuff. I'm like, wow, you were getting a little obscure. That's always good to see.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Blade's first appearance. That was. I mean, it's come down a lot since then.
I think he grabbed that too.
But which that's a seminal book, and it's just all those 70s horror titles like that have those amazing characters that just nobody really knew if they were going to take off, if they were going to be if it was going to be something ongoing or if it was going to be good, and a lot of those had really low print runs. And we're coming into a comics decline now that's pretty heavy, and probably it's going to be a while before we see another big boom. And I don't think we've actually even seen the bottom yet of this, because I don't think that the recession's going to get any better anytime soon. So it's a situation where find out what's a really good price point for you, whatever you want as far as those keys are concerned, and buy, and hold on to it for 10 years, 15 years, and it's going to take off. And sometime during that time, your investment's going to pay off. It's just, I don't know when, but it will. And that's just the track record. That's the way it works.
And the other part of it is, and I think this is definitely something that came during the pandemic, is it definitely changed my buying habits. It's like you start looking at some of the prices that you're paying for some of these modern books that it's just like you don't know what you're getting. And it's like, well, if I just drop 3 of those, I can go get a nice back issue or a nice key.
Yeah.
I mean, exactly. I totally built up my Conan collection, my Tarzan collections using that logic. I was like, man, why would I pay like $4 for this book over here? And I'm like, every month I just don't miss that for 4 months, and I get like 3 or 4 nice Tarzans that are very fine, or even a near mint in some cases. It's like you'll finally read those older, like those good '70s John Buscema Tarzans. Like
even people reading stuff like Rom Space Knight.
Oh, dude, I totally.
And it's great. It's great compared to what's coming out now. And all those older series like that from the '70s, are selling. And
I can't quite do Shogun Warriors, but Rom definitely.
I can't do
Shogun
Warriors. A whole other level.
I'm a giant robot fan.
The Transformers era from the '80s, the Marvel stuff from the '80s, bam, that stuff doesn't stick around long. And it's just that was like that was when Marvel was firing on all cylinders. And
even going and looking at the old Shang-Chi stuff too.
Whole
another different genre that they decided to tap into in the '70s, and wow, people actually liked it. Who'd have thought?
Oh yeah, I picked up a couple of Team Americas, the ones that Zek and Mark Bright did, because I was like, because I didn't read them as a kid, and I always saw them, and it's like not necessarily they're good, but it's like it just reminds me of comics, and basically they're about the same price as the model.
Yep,
they just are, and it's like it's fun. It's like it's not necessarily like it's like Shakespeare, but it is just fun. It's just fun to read, like Micronauts. I tell people all the time, I say, man, if you haven't read Micronauts, like the Mike Golden stuff, you're just missing out. It's just like it's just beautiful stuff, and it's like, and it's within the price ranges. Yeah, dude, just like don't buy new comics for like a week and just go get a couple of those Micronauts joints, and you're straight.
And you're not throwing your money away. It's not like with the modern comics, which you're basically throwing your money away. It's not going to go up in value because it's crap. And you go out and get the old pulp stuff, and you're not only going to have some enjoyment out of it, you're going to be able to put it back and enjoy a return on it. So
I just find it funny how it's more cost effective and better for your collection if you're a collector to just skip buying new books and just save that money, like you said, and buy back issues, because you know what, the modern books at some point they're going to become back issues. You can get to them.
Oh, they will.
When and you'll probably be able to get them for cheaper.
It's like
years down the road.
No, it's like it was almost like when in the '90s, when it was like the '90s was weird because it was just like there were books that I really enjoyed. Like I'm not as much of a downer as some people there about the '90s in terms of the quality. I thought the '90s really were very eclectic, and there was just a lot to get. And I think it was just like some marketing practices here and there where you just had these books that were showing up like in 25-cent boxes and stuff like that. Because I was listening to the episode with Doc when you guys were talking about the '90s and about the variant thing.
Yeah,
exactly. And my thing was like, and you guys are actually right about that, because it was like back then I was warning against it because I was like, okay, I can see where this goes if they don't moderate themselves. But it was like, with all due respect, getting that Ghost Rider glow in the dark cover, that was freaking cool. See,
I remember that.
Those X-Men covers, like with the 3D hologram, those things were just
Danny
cool.
Ketch Ghost Rider was an awesome character.
Exactly. Yeah. I was just like, it's like it was like, you could see where it could go wrong. Like today, when we get a Eternals #1 and there's like 50 covers, and it's like, bro, nobody cares about Eternals. It's like, why are you making 50 covers? And I know why, because the technology, the printing is cheaper. But it was like back then, it was like, even though they were doing variants, they felt they were more, to me, they were more meaningful. Even Silver Surfer #50. It was like, okay, like Cheap Trick, but it made sense. It made sense.
It contributed to the book, and it wasn't it wasn't just some way to fleece customers out of more money.
Exactly. It's like, but it actually was cool. Because I remember I bought the Danny Ketch one, because Mark Texera, the way he drew that was looking. But I was like, the first thing I did was I held up to the light for about 2-3 minutes, went in the bathroom and watched it glow.
Yeah.
watch the glow. But those were good gimmicks. Like those were good gimmicks. I still like, even though this is probably towards the end of that whole gimmicky era, there was a book that Malibu was putting out called The Protectors. I really loved that book because it felt like the Mighty Crusaders done right. That's what I liked about The Protectors. But it was like, I think it was the 5th issue when the character Nightmask gets killed, and the whole issue was like it had a bullet. He got shot in the chest with a bullet, and it went all the way through the book.
Yeah.
Went through the book. And it was like, but that was like the one gimmicky cover out of a pretty much 6 to 12 issue run. But it made sense to the story, and it was just kind of cool. Yeah, it was just kind of cool. So yeah, the 90s I think gets maligned a lot more than it should. The
Also,
90s.
The great thing about the
variant
90s
covers, they were hitting specific. They were doing it for a specific issue for a specific reason. It wasn't just like, oh, here's this month's book, and we're gonna have 50 variant covers for it.
Yeah,
Why?
Miracle Man is on the cover, and it's like, what? Huh?
Yeah.
And I have to be careful selling those kind of books. So, when I raid the dollar bins of the stores and selling those books to normies, because it's like they are literally picking them up based on what's on the cover. So it's like if somebody's like really into Spider-Gwen, for instance, and I have a few people with that, and Spider-Gwen's on the cover, but she's nowhere in the book, you just don't want to burn people like that. So I was just like, nah, as much as I'd like to get that money, I don't think that's really good. And I like it a behind the scenes edition for Amazing Spider-Man #1. And and this lady came by with like a 3-year-old girl. She really liked Spider-Man. I said, no, you don't want to take this one because it's not. That's more like if a collector wants to have it. But if you want something like, here, take this True Believers with Black Widow, she'll like that. She'll enjoy that. There's a lot going on. So it's like, I mean, I almost dread what the dollar bins are going to look like in about 2 to 3 years.
What they already look like. I've got books.
That's true. Yeah.
I've got books from 2018, 2019, 2020, 21 in the dollar bins. And like Squirrel Girl, shit like that, dollar bin material. And I mean, we're lean. And it's like I'll order 6 copies, 5 copies. I have 4 people on the list, on the pull list, and get 1 or 2 extra copies. They don't sell, they go in the dollar bin, and
keep it moving. Yep.
And it's like, get them out of here. I don't want to sit on them. I don't want to look at them. And it's sad, but it's just a part of the way things go. Well, I was going to talk about the 90s for just a second. What was funny was during that era of the comic book, everybody thought that I'm going to buy this, I'm going to put it back, and it's going to be worth a fortune. What's hilarious about that is that people started dumping that stuff too soon.
Yeah. Some
of those books are turning around.
Yep.
X-Men #1 sold millions upon millions upon millions. Some of those covers are going for $30 to $35 a pop now in near mint condition.
Yep.
$100, $120 a pop if they're graded CGC 9.8. They're starting to climb. And because of the quality of the storytelling and the artwork at the time, and people went back and they dumped all that stuff, or they burned it, or they're like, oh, this is never going to go up in value. And the early Spawn issues, where McFarlane sold like 5 million copies of, this particular Spawn or another. And all of those books are climbing now.
Because every person should own a copy of Spawn #1 for no other reason than that's probably the most gorgeously colored comic book in the history of comics.
Yeah.
For no other reason than that.
Everybody should have Spawn 1 through 10.
Yeah. It's like,
and those books are climbing, and they are, and it's shocking everybody, but people cut out of that too soon.
Now you're right. You're right about that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
People cut out of that too soon, and they didn't wait, because some of those books, they printed millions and millions of copies of them. How many millions have been destroyed now? How many of them, look like shit, and they have water stains, or they're damaged, or whatever like that. A very tiny fraction of a percent are in really, really high grade now, and people want them. And, if they'd done what they were going to do and what they're supposed to do, put them in bagging boards, put them away, don't touch them, in about another 10 or 15 years, they're going to be looking at some money. They're already starting to look at a little money, but it's a situation where you got to stay the course. If you believe in something and you want to collect it, you want to impart it to a future generation or something like that, you need to stay the course, because you're not going to get a quick turnaround in collectibles like that.
Yeah. So I'll piggyback that because my phone's about to die and I have to jump off, guys.
I got
I
to
really
jet
enjoyed this
too.
conversation, but I'll say this to that point, because somebody made that same point to me about, and I know hosts will appreciate this. This is a gamer about being a Dreamcast owner. See, it's like, man, it's like, yeah, it's like that when that system came out, it was just like the games that were on there. It was just like, the guy told me, because I was talking about getting rid of him. He's like, no, dude, don't do that. It's like, if you really like those games, you really enjoy those, he said, just sit on that, because like you'll see. And he's
Real
right.
gems on that
Oh,
platform.
dude, it's like, it was I would say that Star Wars Jedi Power Action was the first actual Star Wars game that made you feel like you were a Jedi. It just Soul, what was it, Soul Calibur, just across the board. But that now to find anything that would nearly have that kind of library, it's almost impossible. But to Pele's point, because his phone's about to die, the real thing is none of us realized at the time that so many people were buying these books that weren't collectors, and it was almost going to be scarcely built in the first place because they never were going to take care of them right. So anyway, with that, this was great. I hope to get invited back again. I really enjoyed it.
More than welcome.
I had a great time, dude.
Yeah, Pele, it's good to talk to you again, man.
Always great to talk to you, Gevian. Yeah,
all right, take care,
I
guys.
miss you, man. I miss
you too. Yeah, I know.
Take care of yourself out there.
All right, bye bye.
Take care, Gevian. Yeah, I've got to go too.
Yeah, I didn't want to keep you too long. I don't know if,
but I've had a great time. And,
I appreciate it, man. I enjoy. We didn't really hit the topic so much, but if you go into the ones with me and Doc, we did end up doing the same thing. But it's just your knowledge is, to me, it's fascinating because it's a different aspect of the industry that I have no real knowledge of to speak of. You know what I mean?
It's collectibles are strange because it happens in cycles, and what's was extremely popular last year, the meat and potatoes, the great characters, early appearances, all the stuff that was great that went crazy in 2021, it's still worth collecting. You just have to realize that we don't have the pandemic anymore. People aren't locked up. Those things are still worth collecting. They're still awesome books to have. Just set your sights lower, look for lower prices, get in at a cheaper place, and because it's going to come around again. And the only thing that the pandemic did was it sped up the cycle a little bit, and it revealed what can be possible when everything is going right.
Yes.
And it's going to come back around again. You just have to be patient.
Yeah. Thankfully, my other hobby outside of gaming is I build mecha models, a lot of Gundam stuff and things like that.
Okay.
The big problem with that hobby, at least, and this goes for a lot of them really, but the big one is, it's not that Bandai doesn't pump out kits. They really don't. It's the goddamn fucking scalpers.
Right. Yeah.
Because the company that makes these kits, they have what gets shipped out to the stores, but then they have what they refer to as their premium. And premium means something completely different in Japan than it does for the rest of the world.
Right.
Premium in Japan means limited.
Yeah.
That
means very few.
Right. So you go, they have a website for it. It's referred to as P Bandai, and you pre-order kits, and that's how you get them. Yeah, you can get them. And I say that with finger quotes.
Right.
Because chances are, as soon as something gets announced, it's gone.
Yeah.
Bots just scalper bots grab it up, and
it's sad but true.
And it's like that for so many things, but that's really the only problem with that hobby.
You think this is ugly now? Wait until you see what happens with Wizards 30th when these proxies come out for the Power 9 and the and all the reserve list stuff, because I think that's going to come back and bite Wizards so hard. It's going to bite Hasbro so hard because those cards mean nothing without the authenticity.
Yeah.
The reason why Power 9, the reason why those cards, it's the reason why comics of that era are so incredibly valuable and so important is the authenticity of the originals. And you could reprint, you could republish, you can reprint, you can re-put them out about, any way you want, but they aren't going to matter because they're not the originals.
Right.
And the $999 for a 4-pack of, reserve list cards that, may or may not have value as reprints or as.
And they're allowed in one format?
They're not even going to be allowed in formats.
That's what I'm saying. Like Power 9, I don't think you can use in any
Power
format.
9, yeah, legacy format. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. And
legacy
not many people
format,
play Legacy because of the price point of playing it.
But we do have players that will play Legacy format. But there's you can play one Mox, you can play one of each one of the Power 9 in your deck. And one Black Lotus, and it's always awesome when you see the Legacy players and you see that Black Lotus come out, pop, and that's always cool. That's always awesome when you watch a Legacy game. And if he's one, that guy spent a fortune. Two, he doesn't get to do it that often. But a proxy of that being worth big money, no, I'm sorry.
No, I don't think so.
It's just not. And I'm kind of hoping that the scalpers go out and grab these.
Right. It's one of the times when you hope the scalpers get burned.
And they just get burned so badly that it just puts them out of business. But
it's entirely possible. I mean, I didn't hear that about the proxies thing because I haven't kept up on Magic. And
yeah, they're just proxies. They don't even have the original Wizards back on them, and they cannot be used for tournament use. And they're worthless.
And it's $1,000 for 4 of them.
For 4 packs. For 4 packs. For 30th anniversary, and they're limited. There's going to be I think they're going to be making 10 or 20,000 packs. That's it.
That's going to bite them so fucking hard.
It's going to kill them.
Oh my God. That's going to be 10 times worse than what happened with the first Modern Masters.
Oh yeah.
And that was a shit show.
Yep. It's going to be bad.
And this is going to be even worse.
Yeah, it's like Secret Layer's gone wild, and it's going to be so much worse than that.
Oh.
But and they're screwing there's some people that I've heard I can't wait to get buy packs. I can't wait to do just take the money that you normally buy for that. If you're going to buy 4 packs, or if you're going to buy a box of 4 packs, if you're going to buy 4 boxes of 4 packs and waste all that money, just go buy some real power.
Yeah.
Just go buy some real dual lands. Just go buy some nice revised dual lands, or some, or even go back and get some, beta dual lands, for that kind of money. But, do something meaningful with the money. Don't flush it down the toilet. And
because they'll tell them, oh, hey, we can do this again. And they'll do something even dumber.
Yeah. And I think Hasbro's just lost the plot. And
that's just not a good plan at all.
No, real bad ideas. And
hey, you know what? If they turned around and wanted to say, hey, $1,000 for a full reprint set of, say, alpha or beta or something like that.
Yeah.
I could see that. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it might be a bit high if you're going to have a complete proxy set for $500.
Yeah.
I think that's
something like that. Go,
yeah. Or sell them as like you do at the collector's edition price points, for $200 or something like that, and have them like 12 packs in there, for $200. Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
something like that.
Bad.
But for 4, Jesus,
4 packs, 4 booster packs for $1,000, and it's like, just bend over, because they just they don't care at all about the fans anymore. They don't care at all about the customers.
No, that's been evident for a few. That's one of the reasons why I got out. It's like, oh, hey, you're not even acknowledging that power creep is real and becoming a problem.
No, they don't. They don't care. You know,
You know,
I still buy certain sets. I still buy, of course, go through the shop. You know, we still sell it. But as far as personally buying, I still buy certain sets, usually because I'm a big fan of the modern format. You know, I
I was
still
a big
buy,
Commander guy,
you know, I love Commander too.
but
And,
that
you
turned
know,
into a fun format into people just being, oh, it's like, wow, hey, one of the reasons why I stopped playing Standard was I wanted a game to last more than 5 turns, retard.
yeah,
And seeing people pull that off in Commander, it's like, why? Why would you do that?
yeah, it's boring at that point. You know,
Yeah,
it's just, you know, I love the games. You know, if a game doesn't last 30 minutes, I feel bored,
yeah,
you
especially for
know,
Commander.
especially for Commander. You know, and the whole point of having Commander set up was to have drawn out games that you could get into with a group of friends.
Hmm.
And, you know, now it's just as much crap as Standard.
Although that gives me an idea of something we could do sometime if you are interested. Are you familiar with a program called Tabletop Simulator?
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I've actually played Magic on that with a buddy of mine,
Oh, okay.
and it felt more like playing Magic than any of the video game renditions of Magic.
Oh, I still play it. I still play on our Magic tournament nights at the
Nice.
shop. Yeah, I still play. You know, I've got I've got my decks there. Yeah, I've got my binders.
And
You know,
there are
they're
ways
locked up.
to import decks into it. From
Okay.
so like I have nothing anymore. I don't even have deck lists or anything. So me and my buddy, he was just being lazy because he still plays. He's like, we could just you can import decks from I think it was like tappedout.net.
Yeah.
So there, it was very interesting because it made you have to remember all your triggers.
Yeah.
Whereas a video game version will take care of that for you or give you some sort of like, hey, you need to do this. No,
Yeah,
if you
you forgot
missed
to
it,
untap.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you miss it, well, just like in real Magic, you're lost, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. If you aren't keeping track of what you're pinging somebody else for, you know, they're not going to keep track of it for you.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was just very kind of interesting because I'm also a bit of a D&D player. Yeah, I haven't played much lately, but I've also evolved more into just a board game player
Mm-hmm.
in some cases. A big fan of Talisman.
Oh, that the remake of Dark Tower is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really good. I like the original Dark Tower, the Milton Bradley one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had that when I was a kid, and then I bought another one much later in life, and the latest one is just amazing. It's really really good. It's you can even play it by yourself, and it's fun.
I'll take a look at
So,
that.
but yeah, I recommend that for anybody. If you like tabletop games, and you know the miniatures are cool, and the gameplay itself is a lot of fun. It's very, I'm not going to say it's complex. It's not. It's not a complicated game,
Yeah, it's the same
but
reason why I like Talisman a lot. It's deep but not complex.
yeah, that's what this is. It's there's a lot of minutia in the game that you can get into, or you can ignore it. You know, you can get as far into it as you want to get. You can get you can get expansions and stuff like that for it. But I liked it. That's a lot of fun. I'd
To look into
recommend
that
that one.
one.
But I got a jet.
Yeah,
I've got I got people I got to juggle.
yes,
So,
yes. I appreciate your time tonight. It was
no problem. No
great
problem.
talking with you.
Had a good time.
We'll definitely have to do this again.
Yeah, let me know when Doc's going to be on.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like aggravating Doc. So.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to get all three of you guys on at the same time. That'd be a great conversation, I think.
That'd be great.
So, but I appreciate your time. I appreciate everybody who came and hung out in the chat for as little time as they did, or as long as time as they did.
I appreciate everybody for watching, and we will, I will be back on again at some point.
Yes, you will. It'd be great. Absolutely great talking to you again. You're always welcome. And on that note, I'll let everybody go about what they got going on.
Cool.